get it back out, can't get it out. So I went down, hit my head on a chair on the way down, and then just laid there and laughed. And Kathy said, what was that? I said, and I was laughing. She came in, there I was on the floor with both feet and one leg. I shouldn't tell anybody that.
But I've done that.
Can you have a camera going next time so we can get the video of it?
It's been a great YouTube.
I didn't know here if he was sitting here or was it there?
I don't wear glasses. I just have a magnifying glass.
Get it figured out?
Yeah, you're on.
I have to hide my secret notes.
Yeah.
You gonna be here on that? No. Or wait, Heffley won't be here.
Yeah, Doug won't be there.
Doug won't be here, so you can sit in his chair.
Come here, big boy.
Okay, we'll call the Community Development Committee to order, and I'll turn it right over to John.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Sandy Maple. I think everyone here knows Sandy. She is the director of LTAS, Licking County Area Transportation Study. And we owe more to this lady than I can ever discuss in one brief community development meeting. She has done a lot to help the city that we can never repay her for, probably. But tonight, I've asked her here to give a brief explanation of the most current federal transportation program. That may sound boring to you, but the federal transportation program is at the heart of where we get all of our money for road improvements, and it may be very interesting. And by the time Sandy's done, she's an excellent presenter. I think you'll be very well informed. So Sandy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh golly, you made it.
Can you set that bar higher?
I brought some printouts. I promise I will not read slides to you because I like to kill people that do that. There is a ton of information in here. So if you want more details on specifics or whatever, it may be in here, it may not be. The last page has my email. So I'm just going to give up at 80 questions and we're like done. But
Now, do you get overtime for this? No? Then ask as many questions as you want.
no, but I could leave a little early on Friday.
Is that
Good enough over here?
Did everyone get
But I was gone the last week, so I don't know if that would be possible.
Yeah.
And we have new people starting our offices.
So
Yes,
thank you.
exactly, yes. It'll be like, the hook comes up. MAP 21 has some big long acronym, everyone calls it MAP 21, but it's basically moving America forward with progress in the 21st century or something along those lines. I never remember what the acronyms stand for, but the point is, it's the latest highway federal transportation bill. It was just signed this fall, or actually this summer, went into effect October 1st of this year. It is only a 2-year bill. So it will be done or sunset by October 2014. So that's probably one of the biggest things to know. Usually these federal bills for transportation are 5, 6, 7 years, somewhere in that range. This one's only 2. The reason it's only 2 is because, big surprise, Congress couldn't really agree on how they would be able to fund anything more than 2 years. So they could only come up with enough money and ways to fund anything for the next 2 years. So hence, it's 2 years. Now, some of the requirements in the bill, I ain't going into all the details, but some of the requirements in the bill actually stretch out like 14 and 15 years. So there's policy things in here that go many, many years, but the funding package is only 2 years. Can't really see this up on the screen, hence I know how this screen is here at Heath. One of the things that did occur in this that everybody agreed needed to occur is there used to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 200 different funding categories for federal transportation. They have winnowed it down into 6 categories on the highway side and about 4 or 5 on the transit side. So we went from roughly 200 down to like 12. So that's both good and bad because now there's much larger, broader categories, so you have a lot more flexibility within each category, but you also don't have any set-aside funds in some kind of favorite pots of money.
who has that flexibility? ODOT or locals like LCATs and such?
Yes and no. You know too much.
I know the questions now.
You know too much. What happens is, we get these federal bills. They write these federal bills, and then Federal Highway and FTA all interpret the bills that the government wrote. And then it comes down one step further, and the people who hold the money, even though it's divvied out for us, hence ODOT here, although there's people there who agree with me. ODOT then can say, well, that's an allowable item, but we don't allow it in our policy. So sometimes that occurs and sometimes it doesn't. So the money that is assigned to LCATs, we get two types of money, well, three actually, but two types of construction money. We get STP and CMAQ, and they're both mixed in there that still exist. So we can do anything within that federal rule for the LCATs money. But a lot of times what we also do at LCATs is work with the locals to go after other pots and other sources of money at ODOT to try to get other money in there. So we're not only using what's assigned to us, but we're also going after statewide competitive money. And ODOT gets to set those.
Based on their priorities or whatever.
Their priorities, or sometimes they'll say, well, you know, that's allowable, but we don't think that's important. And so they just won't do it.
When, you know, the Port Authority every year, and I know you guys are aware, the Port Authority every year sponsors a one-day, you know, first flight in, last flight out trip, where we primarily focus on talking to congressmen and senators about the Port Authority and the businesses there or whatever. But in the years that I've gone, I have each year been able to arrange a meeting with an official at the White House. And Bill Lozier accompanied Tim Bubb and I this past year, and it was right at the same time that they were going through all this federal highway, because we were talking to T. Berry's office about it and Boehner's office about it. And Bill expressed to the Intergovernmental Affairs Office official at the White House his concern with this idea of having fewer silos of money, because Bill was concerned about ODOT not putting a high enough priority on things like county bridges and other big problems that he has. And so that's kind of why I asked that question, is because that's something, you know, John and of course Eddie have worked well to secure grants and funding for various things that we've been doing. We will need to keep our eye on that ball to make sure that we know who it is that has control of some funding sources, because and how much money are in those funding sources, because there are fewer silos that have been specified for things, and so other priorities for other types of transportation needs and transportation areas could you know, make it harder for us to get funding at the levels that we have in the past. If Columbus thinks that the 3 C's ought to get the lion's share of everything, then it's going to make it more challenging for us.
There were some breakdowns by category as far as trying to assure that different population areas get certain amounts of money, like the STP money, which is our most flexible surface transportation program money. It's our most flexible. When someone says STP federal money, the flag that needs to go up in your head is, I can do anything I want with that money. That's like the golden money. You can do whatever you want with it. You can do transit work, you can do roadway work, you can do safe routes to school work, you can do almost anything you want. It's pretty much an anything pot of money. You can do a bike path. It's the golden ticket money. But they did kind of put some things in there where that STP money, that golden ticket money, has to kind of be, I call it the peanut butter theory. You kind of got to spread it around a lot of different places. They do have some caps on population areas, so at least it can't all go urban or all go rural. But there's some things that I'll fill in on here. one of the big things people say, well, how much money's in this thing? It's roughly the same as what we've been living on the last couple of years. There's a really small increase for inflation. One of the big things to know is the reason this bill's only 2 years is the highway trust fund is basically gas tax. You know, you fill up your gas car at the pump, you pay so many cents per gallon. It's not a percentage, so many cents per gallon. So what's happening is, as we're developing more fuel efficient cars and we're having sticker shock at the pump, we're using less gas, so our revenue is going down. Well, our construction costs for 2 years, over 2.5 years, they spiked 40%, and now they've leveled off and come back down a little bit. But your costs have gone up, and your revenues are going down. That obviously is not the direction you want to go if you still want to build projects. So that's why this bill's only 2 years. And they're predicting that they're going to have to continue to put general fund into the highway trust fund to keep it solvent, or else the highway trust fund's going to run out of funds by fiscal year 15. Hence why this is only 2 years. So the bigger question is, you hear about this, the bigger question is not so much what's in this 2-year bill, because there's really only 3 or 4 main changes from business as usual, but the bigger question is, 2 years from now, how are we going to fund transportation? Because the highway trust fund and the gas tax as we know it by itself is not going to do it. So that's probably the bigger question, and there's been a lot of different ideas kicked around, and no one could come to an agreement. One of the big ideas that was kicked around was a vehicle miles traveled. So everybody pays so much per mile, whether you drive a big honking diesel like my one son, or whether you drive a little Volkswagen Jetta like my other son, or whether you're Mr. 12 miles per gallon or 40 miles per gallon, you're going to pay the same amount per mile. That's one big idea that's been thrown out there. That sounds fair because everyone's using the same amount of roadway space when they're traveling, but the hard part is there's a lot of privacy issues in how you calculate that, how you determine that. Does that mean now that the government's going to be, GPSing where we're all at? Is it going to be a thing where you have to go in and have your odometer read every 6 months and then pay a tax bill off of that? Or there's a lot of different ideas being thrown out around that concept. There's a concept about indexing the gas tax rather than it being a flat amount per gallon, indexing it with the price of gas. So as the price of gas goes up, then just like sales tax, that your revenue would go up. So there's a lot of ideas, and that's the big question actually on the horizon. National goals, nothing totally different than we had in the past. Of course, we care about safety. Of course, we care about infrastructure. Nobody wants their bridges falling in. Nobody wants potholes every 10th of a mile, huge potholes going down the major roadways. We care about congestion, system reliability. Economic vitality was in the last transportation bill. They did add a little more emphasis onto freight because they recognize that freight movement is a big part of the infrastructure. You could see a little more influence of the White House in the environmental sustainability. We've always had a lot of environmental issues in there. There's a little bit more target on that. And number 7 there, reduce project delivery delays. It takes way too long to build a federal project. I actually have a cartoon in my office in one of my emails that shows the fast tracking of a project, and it's 8 years. That's kind of crazy if you ask me. I often tell people like John, I shouldn't have been able to work 25 years just being able to understand the federal transportation. You shouldn't be able to make a career out of understanding how the federal transportation process works. I've done some other things along the way, but unfortunately a lot of it has been understanding how the pieces all work together. There is a highway performance program. This is really, part of this bill is about performance measures, measuring what you're doing, setting targets, reaching those targets, setting new targets, trying to make sure that we're spending our limited resources where they need to be spent. The big question, of course, will be how do you set those targets? If you set them too low, then it's pretty easy to hit them, and you really haven't done anything except make another pile of paper. But if we can do them and use them effectively, then setting targets and trying to make sure that we're always reaching a certain condition of our roadways, a certain condition of our bridges, a certain condition at least of our primary infrastructure. Now this may upset a local resident, you know, and I live on a dead-end street, but if there's potholes on my dead-end street, that's kind of a pain, and it annoys me, but it's certainly not the same as having potholes down the middle of State Route 79. Now, does that mean those potholes on my little local street should never be fixed? Well, of course not, but when you're balancing between a major roadway and a minor roadway, well, I'm probably gonna get some cold mix and some little patchwork on my local street eventually, but 79 is gonna be where you need to, and that's just an economic balance. And sometimes when council folks are on the other end of that phone call, you know, my road's never been fixed, it's never been fixed, I've lived here 22 years, and there's gonna be more and more hard decisions coming down to that as the limited funds go on. But the performance program is based off of, the National Highway Performance Program is looking at those high-level roadways and keeping them to a certain level. Now that's looking at your interstate, that's looking at your State Route 79s, it's looking at 161, I mean, your high-level roadways, and they wanna make sure we're spending money on those.
What are intermodal connectors? What does that mean?
Intermodal connectors, probably the best example in this region is actually in Columbus, Rickenbacker, and the interstate system. What is that little piece of roadway that connects between the Rickenbacker and the interstate? It may be a regular local road, but it's just a little piece. So it's a little piece that connects that big industry area to the network. It's usually a little.
Thornwood Drive is not considered an intermodal connector.
No, it's
Not
generally a very short segment. I think there's a limit on the distance that's considered a connector. And I wanna say half mile, don't quote me, I'd have to look that one up. But yes, those little pieces. There you go, 10 little chunks.
There you go.
10 little chunks. Surface transportation program, this is the one I said is kind of the golden ticket. You could do pretty much anything you want with it. There's that little note there where I talked about how it's split out by population in the state. Some of it's split by population, some of it's split by roadways. In the last transportation bill, there was a 10% set aside out of this STP, the golden ticket money, for enhancement projects. That does not occur anymore. You could still do all of those types of things, but that's up to the discretion of who's ever the keeper of that fund is. So like LCATS with our STP money, we can decide to do that. But projects and programs that we go after that are ODOT controlled money, they get to decide how much they set aside. It has to be on the federal aid system. A lot of people don't understand that. The federal aid system is the higher level class roadways. It's not my local dead end street. It's not, it is Thornwood, it is 79, it is Hopewell, it is Irving Wick. That's all.
And Heath Road, South 30th Street.
Yeah, oh, I forgot about 30th. Yeah.
Thing is that you can't really increase the amount of highways in
Now,
the system it's set, you can't increase it.
right, we can sometimes do trades, like we can trade this road for that road every 10 years, and we're actually gonna be coming up, working on that this spring and summer where we can do some trades. I'm guessing, but I don't think there's many trades that really want to occur in Heath. You guys have your main roadways already on there. The county engineer is definitely looking at doing some trades, particularly around the 161 corridor area because of where the interchanges are and where they weren't 10 years ago. So he's looking at doing some trades, like Morse Road just isn't the same level of road as it used to be anymore. Neither is the old 161, it's still on the federal aid system. Heck, it's a little orphan section now. There's more bicyclists on portions of it than there are cars, so we know that's probably gonna be dropped off, and when we drop that off, we'll be able to add something. We can stay in our target. Promise not to read, but I do digress. Highway safety program, of course, we always still care about safety. The safety program is one of the areas that you're allowed to do safety work on non-federal aid. So you are eligible to do, we can't do safety work on any public road. And there's some programs like that out there right now. One of them that you guys may not know about, anyone involved with Heath School District at all? This one just, I didn't realize this was a new little program that ODOT themselves set aside inside. You can now get the school warning flashing signs completely for free. ODOT's taken it out of the highway safety program. You don't have to do a safe routes to school travel plan. You don't have to go through all of that. You just call them up and say, hey, I got this location, my guys will put it in, and you can go down to ODOT's sign shop in Columbus and they'll give you the signs and you can go get them. Now you gotta run electric and all that.
How about if a bike path has an at-grade crossing of the street?
And there's no special little,
But would it fall under something like this?
the school zones go right at the property lines or just beyond them.
Okay.
It's those 20-mile-an-hour flashing lights.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Is right.
It's on the property
Property
line.
line.
It is on the property line.
Oh, you could probably.
The one there at Licking View?
Yes.
You might go get a 20-mile-an-hour zone flash. Now, in the past, there have been a lot of personnel changes, so I don't know if this would still. When I read that, I'm kind of like, whoopee, who cares? ODOT's always put school zone signs up for free. I don't know if that's still the case out here in this district. This district out here in 5 used to do that for locals all the time. We just would, because they're pretty good about that kind of thing. But they've downsized quite a bit, and I know actually from some other projects, their signal electricians out here are very, very thin. Like, they used to have 4 and now they have 1. It's a little hard to install a lot with one, so they now have to rely on other crews to even do more than just basic signal. But, yeah, we can check into that. I'm sure the request would probably have to come jointly from the city and the school.
Okay.
But we can, remind me and we'll jot that down. CMAC, the wonderful CMAC. This is a pain. CMAC is congestion mitigation air quality. It is what it says. It is designed to reduce areas with congestion or areas that have air quality issues and projects that will make them. One of the things that happened halfway through the last transportation bill was the feds in Washington, not the feds in Ohio, but the feds in Washington kind of started tweaking their interpretation of what was written in the bill, because it used to be congestion mitigation. It's always been congestion mitigation air quality. Well, they kind of stuck an and in there instead of an or, because we used to be able to use CMAC pretty liberally, because we could go to an intersection and show a lot of congestion, and we'd be able to get a project eligible as a CMAC project, or we could show some other project. We did this for transit a lot. We would show that by going from one of these older diesel vehicles to one of these newer clean diesel vehicles, we're going to improve air quality, just basically because of the improvements made in the industry and the engines. Well, now we now have to show both reducing congestion and improving air quality. So we've been pretty creative in our office in doing that. One of the guys who works in our office, Matt Hill, he's pretty creative, and he will push the limits in finding that. So a couple of the projects that are CMAQ eligible that we've gotten through the authorization to use CMAQ is obviously Cherry Valley Road interchange. That's a pretty easy one, to be honest. We're reducing congestion, and all those cars won't have to stop anymore, so the air quality's going to be better. 30th and Church in Newark, we're really pushing the line on that one, but we think we've gotten that one to the point where we're ready to submit it and get it approved.
What do they want to do there?
It's just an intersection improvement, add some turn lanes.
Oh.
Where 30th ends there at Church,
Yeah, yeah.
it kind of gets bottled up there a lot.
Yeah.
We think we can make that one fly.
Like Linville and 13.
Linville and 13.
Yeah.
I would like to, but I don't think we don't have enough congestion there for a long enough period of the day.
How about if I cough every time I do that intersection? Help the air quality argument?
We could try it, but I mean, it's yeah. We've looked at that one. I know you guys have looked at that one and upgrading that one. We thought we would have been able previously. We thought we would have been able to do Hopewell and I always want to say
Licking View.
We thought we would have been able to get previously. We would have been able to get that one through as CMAC. Now it's probably STP, the golden ticket run.
The problem so much isn't funding, is the physical requirements to put it in. You
Yeah,
have to put
that's
it into federal standards, that just explodes the cost of the project. Additional right of way, lengths of roadway, so that's where you run into problems.
Yeah.
This isn't that money's available, not enough is available to put it in federal standard,
Yeah.
and then our match is unreasonable.
Yeah. One of the rules of thumb is on a simple project, if you're gonna go federal, it's gonna cost you 40% more. Because of the federal standards and how detailed, and some of this I say is an ODOT issue more than a federal issue. Some of the issue is how detailed and to what extent the design work and the plans have to be. You know, especially for simple projects, it doesn't have to be as complicated as it's made out to be. I mean, we sell projects OPWC style through Public Works Commission and they get built just fine. And they're a lot simpler and they're a lot straightforward. Now on a complicated project, the cost difference isn't as much, but most communities don't have the money, either federal money or local money, to do really major projects very often. So, you know, the majority of the time we're talking the simpler projects, you know, the simple resurfacing, minor turn lanes, you know, the kinds of projects like Licking View, Hopewell 13, Linville. That road has 4 lanes, has too many as you go out it. I think they're in the 21st dimension.
We did the math on the Midville 13
To
intersection.
go federal,
And it would be cheaper for us just to do it ourselves
they can
than
go.
to have to pay the 20% match and have it done to federal specifications,
Yeah.
which we're over.
Yeah, and every project is unique, but you know, rough rule of thumb is on a kind of a routine type of project that you normally think of, it's roughly 40% more.
That's frustrating.
It's
but-
very frustrating.
My favorite example is on the culvert on Thornwood Drive, it
Oh.
cost us $13,000 to go by federal standards to buy $600 worth of property.
Oh, it was 600, not 300. 300 is the minimum price.
Well, 600 because.
Oh, 3 and 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there we go.
That'll drive you. Hence why I should not have been able to make a career out of understanding this process. Because the minute he said it, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty typical. Transportation alternatives. This is basically a giant silo where they've stuck maybe 8-10 programs into it. It used to be, it's most commonly known currently as the Transportation Enhancement Program. Now it's the Transportation Alternatives Program, because they've also put in the Safe Routes to School stuff in there. They've put in the Rec Trails program. Have you guys ever gotten Rec Trails money from ODNR?
Yes.
Yeah, that Rec Trails program is now in this Transportation Alternatives. One of the things that was the states were allowed to opt out of the Transportation Alternatives program, and specifically they were allowed to opt out of the recreational trails portion of the Transportation Alternatives program. Ohio chose to opt in, so the Rec Trails program will still exist almost how it does now, even though we've put all these programs into a silo. What happened was, the feds had all these programs, they said, too many programs, they put them all into one silo, and then at the state level, they're spreading them back out again.
Sandy, what are NPOs?
Oh, that's what I know.
Okay.
Metropolitan Planning Organizations. Was there something
Yeah.
TAs? No, we
Half
don't
of
call
funding
this
goes to MPOs. I knew what DOTs were, but I didn't know what MPOs.
Yes, but
Yes.
this doesn't really apply to us. Half of the funding goes to the large MPOs, the big
Okay.
kids. We're not one of the big kids. That's why I'm like, why is there something up there?
There's gonna be a test on that.
There's 2 sizes of MPOs. There's small MPOs, which is for urban areas that are between 50,000 and 200,000. And then there's large MPOs, which are between 200,000 and more. There's even kind of this new kind of quasi-category that only sort of exists in this bill, but was thrown around a lot. It's for the million plus.
You hear about MORPC all the time.
They're a big
That's an
one.
MPO, that's a
Okay.
big MPO.
Okay.
LCATS is a baby.
Yeah, we're the little kids. Yeah. Transportation alternatives, this is a little bit more, I won't go through this. One of the big things that occurred with the transportation alternatives, it's really the TE program plus the others, You are no longer allowed to do transportation museums. You're not allowed to do safety educational stuff except safe routes to school. So, which we never did anyway for the most part in Ohio, but other states did. The historic highway programs, like a lot of the stuff that people have gone after for like US 40, gone. You're not allowed to do scenic things. What they cut out were the things that were considered fluff, and that's fine. And not as much in our area, but in some areas, those fluff items were huge economic development generators. So, depending on where you're at, if you cut out scenic overlooks on US 1 in Maine, that's probably an economic development problem. You cut out
Scenic highways through the mountains like in Tennessee.
exactly. They're no longer allowed to do any scenic overlooks, which may be part of the reason that bring people to that area. So for us, some of those changes were not as big of a hit. Some of the other areas across the state, some of my counterparts in other places, really were frustrated by those.
My dad those places. Just keep right on going.
You got a big time to the beach, right? You got a big time. Safe routes to school is not a line item anymore. This is was a really popular program in the last federal bill. It was also extremely popular because it was one of the few items that was eligible at 100% federal, which is pretty much unheard of for the most part. All of the activities that were eligible in Safe Routes to School are still eligible in transportation alternatives, but only up to 80%. But they are now also all the way up to grade 12, K through 12, where Safe Routes to School was only K through 8. And there was a lot of push nationally that K through 8, the lower elementary kids were not the kids walking to school anyway. It was the older elementary and the middle school and even the high school kids that are more likely, parents are more likely to let them walk or ride their bikes to school than they were their second graders. Heck, my 10th grader, if she could walk to school, I'd be all over there right now, because all I do is drive her around everywhere. That girl needs a license or something. In fact, I'm going from here to pick her up. Rec Trails is the program that ODOT did choose to keep. They chose to opt in. And since it is ODOT, Rec Trails will be ODNR controlled. They'll set that criteria like Mark was alluding to. Freight was one of the areas that they did kind of boost the necessity of. It had always kind of been in there, but it was never really given the power that maybe it should have needed to have. Grammar today. It really wasn't given the kind of the clout that it deserved. Freight is really an important part to keeping the country's economy running. TIFIA, this is really small fine print.
So you're talking about truck freight.
Truck freight. Well, any kind of freight. The
So
freight
rail?
policy, it's going to be rail, it's going to be truck, it's going to be port. One of the interesting facts to keep in mind is the largest container ships in the world cannot enter a single U.S. port at this point. Our ports aren't big enough. The container ships have gotten larger and larger and larger, and our ports have not. With the expansion, especially with the upcoming expansion of the Panama Canal, there's a huge port in Vancouver, Canada, which is just across the border from Seattle, that gets a lot of what would typically be U.S. freight coming into it, because it can't make it into the port of Seattle, and then they truck it across. There's also a huge port that Mexico has developed south of California, on the California side, that is larger than the U.S. ports typically. So that's, from a national standpoint, that's an issue. There's some work underway. We've kind of hampered ourselves a little bit in how long it takes for us in the U.S. to get through our own environmental process, and not trying to move forward and streamline some of these, what I would call national mega projects. Here in Heath, Ohio, we probably ought to care about the Port of Los Angeles. We don't hear about it every day, but we probably should care. I mean, it doesn't mean we're gonna individually be the ones working on that project, but it still impacts us. Even more so probably the Norfolk, East Coast ports. Norfolk is another port they're really trying to make larger to be able to handle some of the mega international containers. Yeah, I was kind of shocked when I learned that we can't even, there's no single port in the US that can take a freight, the largest freight. TIFIA, I will not go into this, other than this is for mega projects. I mean, Cherry Valley Road is our largest upcoming project in this community, and Cherry Valley Road really isn't even big enough to talk about TIFIA. It's basically a mega project financing program where you basically play a shell game for funds. That's really what it is. You would get into this, you're into this kind of number things, am I right? ODOT will get into it on some things like the 70-71 split type project. Project delivery and NEPA process. Okay, this was supposed to be this great environmental streamlining, and it looks really good on paper, but the reality is, this at the federal level isn't gonna do much for us at the local level. And that reason being that there are already some, and have been for many years, believe it or not, agreements between ODOT and the Ohio Division of Federal Highway as to how to handle certain normal routine things that go through. So ODOT already has the approval process and doesn't even have to send anything over the federal highway. So a lot of the streamlining things that are occurring at the federal level have already occurred in Ohio by agreements and just spot checks by the Ohio office. So that is a little difficult to handle because it still takes at least 8 years to do a project. Metro planning, this is where you asked, what's this metro planning? Metro planning is MPOs, Metropolitan Planning Organizations. Basically, we're charged with making sure we help the locals work through projects, make sure that there's not some disconnect between communities that are next to each other and on top of each other. For instance, probably one of the best examples John worked on was 30th Street between Main Street and Newark and 79. It would have really been ridiculous if it just stopped at the railroad tracks, which is basically the city limits. Now, you worked on that project too. That's all, it's all great and easy to say, but the reality is the little pieces of the puzzle behind the scene is a hassle. You throw the railroad in and it's a whole third hassle. Railroads are notoriously independent and not necessarily the easiest to work with. Oh, I was being a little more diplomatic than that. The other thing is we also now will have performance targets, and really there wasn't a lot that we weren't already doing because we were trying to stay ahead of the curve, to be honest, and trying to set goals and targets. And one of the other things is now transit has to be included in the MPO board. Well, guess what? Ours already were. So that was a big deal. In the transit world, much like the highway world, some of their programs also got slimmed down and funneled together. And the funding, if you look up there, like you see elderly and disabled goes from 133 million up to 254 million and then 258. You're like, wow, that's a big increase. Well, not really, because they got rid of the New Freedom program. So really what they did was they combined the money also when they combined the silos. So in essence, the transit money stays roughly the same as well, just like the highway program. And they said transit agencies have to be involved in planning. What a novel concept. We were already involved in that, and we already did some of that. One of the things they did, they lost a couple programs that they really liked as well. They lost their JARC program, which was their Job Access Reverse Commute program. The transit world lost Job Access Reverse Commute, and that, if you go back a screen, that didn't show up in any increase in funding like the New Freedom did. So to some extent, that program truly disappeared. And that was one we were looking at pursuing to try to build some shuttles over to New Albany and connections to the Dakota area. So that was a little bit frustrating. That's it. That's a summary. I tried not to read. I tried to tell you that in between the fill in the lines, the nitty gritty. And there's absolutely no graphics because this was the one-day deal. And there's a little thank you to Warpsy because I pirated quite a bit from presentations they already had put together. But I'm all about stealing as long as it's legal and not really affecting the deal if I don't need to. But they steal stuff from me all the time. We actually work really well with the staff at Warpsy.
Well, Sandy, thank you very much. And next summer, when you see South 30th Street being paved, think of all of this. Because all of this just to get that little road paved.
And then the little piece of sidewalk that's gonna get connected there that's missing, I won't go into the nitty gritty details. You know what some of them are, but that was probably 4 meetings and it's still really not being funded the way that it should be getting funded, but it's getting funded and it's gonna be done, and that little piece of sidewalk that's missing is gonna be included. And hopefully, it'll all.
On the east side or the west side too?
Both sides.
Yeah, cause right now there's, and the reason it's not connected is.
Do we have any sidewalk in Heath on the west side?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we?
Yeah, going down, and then there's a.
For the dairy aisle and all that, and then it stops right before you get to the tracks. It just dead ends into.
It's
Dirt
actually
tracks.
newer. That's
Yeah, it's
actually
a newer part.
That's a newer part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be honest, we were sitting in a meeting and John, we looked at the map of the corp line and John looked at Brian and goes, it's all in Newark. And they're like, yeah, and John's like, it wasn't quite that blatant, but it was kind of, and I was kind of like, whew. Only because it was complicated and messy enough being in one jurisdiction trying to connect that with the railroad, and they're removing there's 2 rail lines through there, they're removing one, and who should pay for what, and, you know, that now we have to get new lights and signals because the rails are a different distance apart, and, you know, well, can we get or rail safety money, and, well, what's the rating on that crossing, and okay, well, we can get that, but we're gonna cap you at this, and okay, we have this much money, we're gonna cap this program at this, well then where's the gap gonna come in? And the railroad said they'd pay it, but then they reinterpreted what they said to be a different way, and then Newark might get caught hanging with the bag if the project goes over the estimate.
The moral is the simplest of ideas, such as putting a sidewalk across the railroad tracks.
Or you're missing a little piece.
This is the most complex, frustrating issue that turns into a major fiasco.
Yeah,
Not caused by us, caused by this. So,
it is.
when you ask for a simple thing, a sidewalk down 79, or a sidewalk across the railroad tracks,
Oh, don't ever say railroad track, cause we cringe.
okay? It's a lot easier to say it. That's when I get into bed and start shaking and get out of here.
And there's so many things, I mean, it makes sense, and you should still ask, but just understand that it, unfortunately, is not a simple process.
Speaking of not simple processes, not since we had you here, could you maybe just take a couple of minutes to update the council members on the public transit merger?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay, the not simple process. We have 2 transit agencies. Actually, no, we don't. We had 2 transit agencies that overlapped and ran on top of each other. So we had 2 sets of everything. So the obvious solution, that's very simple to say, is we should only have 1. That part was very simple. Determining who that should be or what structure that should be was a little more difficult. That has all been determined. You were involved in that. Licking County Transit Board, which operates Licking County Transit, has taken over all of the transit service in the entire county for everybody. Earthworks Transit closed on December 31st. That all sounds very simple. There was a lot of behind the scenes work to meet all the FTA, which is the Federal Transit Administration, meet all their rules, all their requirements, and simple things like all the vehicles had to be completely inspected, and there was a lot of delayed and late maintenance and vehicle work that was not done. There were vehicles that probably should not have been on the road. There was one that was taken in for an inspection, had just come off the road and was totaled, and he had just come off the road. So there were some pretty serious maintenance issues that
Among the earthworks vehicles that were being used?
Yes. Those were addressed. We had to do, simple things like making sure all those things occurred, making sure all those repairs got repaired, making sure that the current contract was adhered to on both sides. In all fairness to the two vendors that were providing service to both sides, getting a new contract out there for all vendors to respond to. There is a new vendor providing the service for Licking County Transit as of January 1st. Their name is National Express. I was involved in the selection committee off of that, request for proposals. They were actually my second choice, but they're a much superior vendor to either of the two vendors that we had operating in either location previously. The fare structure, in the consolidation, we did what I term as a no harm, no foul, which really makes sense right now during basketball season. No harm, no foul, meaning we took the lowest fare offered by either agency in any of the scenarios. We actually, in essence, had 8 fare structures before. You may not realize it, but there were 8 different fares that you could have had.
Very complicated.
It was extremely
Because
complicated.
ours was a lot of times based on how many people happened to be on the vehicle at the time, and so you didn't know how much you were paying for transportation until.
Really?
Yeah, that's
Well,
what
that
we had
was-
a contract.
That's their contract. That's like a whole different ballgame. But from the public standpoint, if I was just Joe
You're
Citizen,
talking about for Jobs and Family Services?
Job and Family Services, and theirs is still complicated. And who case managing that project, both on the case manager side and on the transit side, is complicated, but it's a really good, they make it all work on both sides of there. But on the public transit side, if I was Joe Citizen, and I live on, this is the example I used in some of the public meetings, if I lived on Blue Jay Road, I call up the transit, I call up Earthworks. Earthworks had 6 of the 8. I call up Earthworks and say, oh yeah, I live in Heath, because my family address is Heath. And I'm sure you folks know that not everybody actually knows where they really live. Well, I may not really live in Heath. I may live in the township. So then it's a different fare structure. And depending on what time of day I wanted to go, it might be a different fare structure. And depending on where I want to go, it might be a different fare structure. So now, we don't have 8 fare structures anymore. We have 2. You either call ahead, or you don't call ahead. And you go anywhere you want in the entire county. From across the street to New Albany. And we also matched the smallest fare structure for anywhere, and that's the fares we selected. We also matched the largest service hours anytime. So we now have 7-day-a-week operation at the lowest fare that was offered in any of the 8 fare structures. So it is $4 anywhere you want to go in the county if you call the day ahead. That's half price if you are over 65 or if you are disabled, and you have to get a disabled verification to the transit. If you call the same day, it's $6 anywhere you want to go, and $3 if you're elderly or disabled. Where before it was anywhere between $2 and $14, and I could tell you all the details in between of how it would be. So now it's 2 and 4.
And this is the door-to-door service?
It is demand response, curb to curb, address point to address point, not through door. There's some issues, and if people say, oh, well, I need them to, and that every vehicle is wheelchair accessible. One of the other things that a lot of people don't realize is there are going to be bike racks on almost half of the vehicles here shortly. So you'll also be able to take your bike with you and stick it on the bike rack. So, you know, if you're, say you need to go up to 21st Street, or you go to downtown Newark, or you wanna come into Heath and shop in a couple of the little places, or go several different places, you can throw your bike on the bus, on the racks. I think they're front racks. I'm not sure if they're front racks or rear racks, but anyway, you'll be able to put your bike on the bus, and you'll be able to make all those little errands, make all those little stops, and then ride home on the bus. So that'll be a nice addition. That was some stimulus money at 100%. We got some programs with the scraps left over. So, but yeah, it'll be. And I just got back from vacation late Saturday, so I haven't had a chance to talk to the transit folks to see how the first week went. I'm sure there were some bumps. I mean, anytime you make some transition, I'm sure there were some bumps, but I know we did a lot of work ahead of time. A lot of the riders were transitioning over ahead.
I haven't fielded any calls. If you already come across them.
No.
Keith, anybody call in or?
We got tremendous positive response on the consolidation. There are still a lot of people interested in fixed route. There's still an effort trying to develop a way to fund a new fixed route or some additional service like that. It's on a time schedule. Feasible.
One of the positives was Newark put a new person in charge. So he didn't have a vendetta and was working very hard with the county. And of course, the county had every reason to be positive, so.
Well, yes and no, because now they get the overages. They gotta come up with a local match.
Well, you had two options. You didn't add or you didn't have anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It was-
And Newark was no longer, and even previously, was not really, they were not staffed appropriately to manage the system. And they had one person previously that worked on transit, and, you know, you've gotta babysit those contracts. I mean, you gotta babysit. So, yeah, I will tell you, we met, the City of Newark folks, Lincoln County Transit folks, and myself met every Tuesday afternoon and had what we called operational meetings, and we went over, okay, well, how are we gonna get all the E&D people transferred, you know, and we'd go through their records and, you know, and transfer those people. The ones that were expired, they tried to get a hold of those folks and get them updated. I mean, just all that nitty gritty, and there is, I can tell you, from behind the scenes work, there is no way you could have pulled this off if everybody was not there. Yeah. Not, okay. Yeah. You were
And
absolutely.
in the middle of that, the new vendor.
Yeah, which I think will be, actually, it was kind of interesting because we scored, I mean, each submittal was like this. We scored all of them, and actually, the first thing I did was I looked at the title sheet, and I scored them without any knowledge of whose I was looking at. And it was kind of interesting to see how that scoring came out.
The end result is thanks to Sandy's hard work, very hard work,
No,
We
I,
now have
a lot of people's hard
a
work.
much improved transit system for the public
A lot
out there.
of people's hard work.
So, you spearheaded the whole thing, Sandy.
Yeah, I kicked the hornet's nest. I held the, okay, we're not gonna split this money anymore. We're not coming, there used to be an agreement to split the transit money. And neither side was happy. They both thought they should have more. Well, I pretty much said, you know what, you've all said that we need to consolidate, so the next agreement's not good. I'm not comfortable presenting anything to the LCAT policy, which is going to ultimately sign off on that agreement that doesn't include steps to consolidation. And so they knew they were not gonna get any money because I was gonna sit on it.
Keeper of the purse, help make it happen.
Yeah.
And you also called all the, MPO members to let them know what our agreement before you did it, so that was pretty smart.
Well, I don't like going into meetings without,
With risk.
well, or, I mean, turn the tables. If something's gonna be, you know, like tomorrow we have an LCATS meeting tomorrow, there's nothing really hot or controversial on it, so no one got any personal calls about that one. It's kind of like routine administrative stuff, but if there's something hot, I like to let people know.
Sandy, thank you very much.
Better go get your daughter.
Thanks, Sandy.
Yes.
Yeah, I drove you guys crazy. I didn't, but I
Hopefully she'll
kept you too
pursue
long.
another
bicycle.
type of job. Does anyone have any questions, Sandy?
Not on 79 in the dark.
She could get a boyfriend with a car.
She has a boyfriend, but he lives in Canal Winchester.
Oh.
That's almost worse.
Oh,
Good
my
for you.
goodness. Wow.
The further away, the better.
Well, I know, they never get to see each other. It's kind of safe.
Thanks, Sandy. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow.
Have a good evening.
And I'll have a half a box
Did you get your
of
stick?
Oh, yeah, you need that.
Can I just pull it out?
I don't know, is it safe?
Oh, okay. This is your technology.
Sometimes it does, but this doesn't.
It's unsafe to get.
A little later.
There you go.
Hot
Thanks, Sandy.
diggity bye, thank you.
All right.
Him and that,
That's why I
Take it easy, Sandy. We'll see
So I
you.
divided the city money.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much.
I'll need to send you one
Have you been in Dell? Yeah, have you? Okay.
Transportation, although it may seem boring sometimes, is a really critical part of what we do. Anyway, if there are no questions on that, please, you want to go to item number 2? Yeah, okay. This is just an update. At the last council meeting, you forwarded a legislative request to the Planning Commission for consideration regarding vacation of a little stub of property adjacent to St. Leonard's Church, across from St. 30th Street. And I just wanted to let you know, we did communicate with the church. They are interested in this, and they will have some presence at the Planning Commission meeting coming up later this month.
I like that idea of keeping these.
Yes, the church actually doesn't want to let it go. So it should be an interesting meeting between the wants.
How about safety forces, are they?
They have not said anything yet. It's not been presented to them. So it's really, it's not too much of a safety issue at this point.
Access for, safety vehicles, emergency vehicles?
No, they can get there just as easily off of Personal Road. Oh, what this is James Ave, Clark, James, Barb. James Ave actually extends all the way to the St. Leonard's Church property. And there's an area between South 30th Street and the church property that is just grass. And 2 property owners on either side would like to get half of each of that. But the church is saying, wait a minute, what if we want accessibility to that area? So it takes some wisdom on the part of the planning commission to deal with that.
It's a rare case.
City council.
Got a car wreck somewhere on Dorsey Road, one way in, one way out. Or a fire on Sequoia Lane, for example.
And what do the property owners really gain? I mean, aren't they using that grass already and?
Well, they're using it already. What they gain is it increases the value of the property. Nothing really more than that. They're always gonna have the use of that property, and it's doubtful that a road will ever go through there. So it's a matter of just valuation of the property. There'll be a little more value to them. They can maybe build things closer to the property lines and stuff like that as a result of it. So it does benefit the property owner, but to what extent, it's hard to say.
It doesn't really benefit the city.
No, it has no benefit to the city whatsoever.
We don't use that for access, so we
No.
never,
When that subdivision was put in, it was a reserve. There were a lot of them all over the place. We vacated one about a year ago, and River Oaks. Or actually, River Oaks,
At the bottom of that hill.
Greenbrier Estates.
Yeah.
Greenbrier. But, conditions have to be right to do it, and everyone is different, so. Anyway, the planning commission will consider that. It may not even make a decision this month's meeting. It may want to continue it, whatever. Item number 3, ODOT urban paving schedule. Urban paving is a program that ODOT has to pave state highways that go through cities. We have 2 of those, 79 and 13. ODOT determines when they will be paved and schedules it. The city pays the 20% we usually pay. ODOT pays the remaining 80%. They came out with an urban paving schedule going through 2017, and a State Route 13 is on that schedule, not 79 but 13. So probably, around the summer of 2015, ODOT will be paving the section of State Route 13 that goes through Heath, beginning up where the water tower is on 13 and then coming down to about where Orchard Street is in that area there. So we just want to remember that. I don't know when they are going to consider paving State Route 79. Obviously, one portion of it's just been paved. The portion below us here was paved 5 years ago. It's in good shape. What's in between? It could be 3, 4, 5 years. Could be 5 or 6 years before they get to that. But anyway, that's what the urban paving program is.
Where's it gonna start?
It's probably going to start around the Heath Corporation limit on 13, which is a little ways past
They
the
have
water
an
tower.
embankment project about to go right through that?
That's a different one that ODOT will pay for 100%. They'll probably do that another. They may do that as part of this project. I don't know.
There's some logic, yes.
Yeah, so they may and they may not. But it'll start at the corporate line on 13, go north until we hit Newark, and some of it will go into Newark. So anyway,
We could rake a little bit of that hot mix out of those trucks as they're going by and put in a couple turn lanes.
Just a little on the north side on Linville there, huh?
what I did do is this will be the same time that we pay Hopewell Drive. So I sent an email to ODOT asking if they could tie the two projects together to give us a little better cost volume discount on asphalt. So, so we'll have to see if they can do that.
Makes sense.
That way you do the whole section.
Who makes that call? Just District 5?
District 5.
Okay.
So anyway, any
When do
questions?
they make that decision?
I don't know. I'll be talking to them tomorrow. Give you a clear idea.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? That's what urban paving is. Item number 4, the Thornwood Drive repaving project. We have two projects on Thornwood Drive, the culvert replacement and the repaving. We were going to do the culvert replacement this coming summer and the repaving the next summer of 2014. However, the county discovered some issues in regard to their having ownership of quite a bit of the right-of-way on Thornwood Drive. And they were not in a financial position because of all their other projects to consider resurfacing Thornwood Drive, and we wanted to do it. But they did realize that the culvert replacement project was absolutely necessary. So they contacted the mayor and I, and we met with them, and Bill Lozier, the county engineer, came up with a really nice solution. He said, why don't you let us do the culvert project? In other words, they'll pay for all the construction, they'll manage it and everything else, because they have a special county engineers fund that they can draw from that will pay for 100% of that, and the city pays 0. In return, we will cover the county's portion of resurfacing Thornwood Drive the next year. The net result of that is the city will save anywhere between $20,000 to probably $40,000 by doing that. It was an excellent suggestion. Bill Lozier thought of it, and it really helps us. And in addition to that, we originally were not going to be able to use Ohio Public Works funds as a match, our match, for the Thornwood Drive project because of a lot of things. But because this has changed, that puts us in the eligibility area for OPWC funds for us to use OPWC as our match of the ODOT funding for that project. So where we would, like the Hopewell Drive Bridge, where we ended up paying $15,000, $10,000 on a $1 million project. So that's what we're going to try to work for, something like that. So a few things have changed.
So even if we don't get that, though, we will still end up saving money compared to if we had done the culvert as originally planned and done Thornwood Drive as originally planned.
Exactly.
And then I'll be working with Bill Lozier to come up with a long-term maintenance agreement for Thornwood Drive. This process educated me on the fact that the county engineer's office may have additional funding sources to deal with things like culverts and bridges that just aren't available to municipal governments, and that the surface condition of Thornwood Drive will probably never be as high a priority in the eyes of the county engineer's office as it is to the city of Heath, given its economic development potential for the city and the area. So I'll work with Bill over the coming months to put together a maintenance agreement on Thornwood Drive so that hopefully things like this that we were able to kind of figure out on the run we'll already have spelled out in the maintenance agreement.
The end result is less money that we get to spend. And we've developed a much better relationship with them as a result of it. Item number 5, we have already torn down the one house next to the old drive-in theater as part of this Moving Ohio Forward demolition program. We did get another structure to qualify, which was one we originally selected. And that's at the intersection of South 30th Street and Grandview Ave. I think it's Keith's house actually. We just had it over. South 2nd Street and Grandview Ave. It's where the old lawn monument factory used to be.
The air mills.
Air mill, so air mill.
Yeah,
The air mailbox.
yes, that's it. The property owners were able to prove that a portion of that property had been used for residential purposes. So, the contract to demolish those structures will probably be issued, and the project will probably be complete around the end of this month. What we also thought we'd try to do is the building right in front of the police department. It used to be the old watch repair shop. It's sitting out there vacant that Joe McCarthy owns. And talking to the Newark people, that has been used as a residence, and it may qualify for the program too. So we're going to see if we can get that included in the program. All this is 100% reimbursable from the state. So in the end, every penny that we spend to hire a contractor to do something, we get that penny back, plus we get rid of some really unsightly structures. So we're going to go for that one too if we can.
So are you talking about the one right out here, right next to the bike path?
Yes, that one. So
That
I've got it.
property is all the dog.
The one that had the dogs.
Yes.
That property would be a little more marketable from a commercial perspective too, for
Yeah.
building.
And that's good. It helps us all.
This one right here, on that first street there, if it keeps on going down, we should qualify too.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Was next door to you, right?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
John's favorite house.
oh, Chili's Ferries.
No, next door to
Oh,
him.
that
we
look, hey, that looked nice over Christmas. They nice decorations out there. Oh, on Indian Head Drive, there's a house we call the Log Cabin House. And I get about one complaint a day on it because it's really weird, really badly done. And for years, the homeowners had messes all over the house. And it's neater. It still looks unusual. There's something we can do about that.
Hey, John,
Yes.
I don't know, a lot of people may not know, Mr. Perry passed away over the holiday.
Yeah, Julius Berry owned the big, always under construction house that you could see from Irvingwood Drive. It's on Ram Lane. And for years, I knew Julius, really nice guy. We had a great relationship. I probably issued him a dozen violations. And we were partially successful in getting this property cleaned up. Got rid of junk cars, forced him to turn out a big old garage that was there. Property still doesn't look that good, but now we have a problem because there's no one to administer the estate at this particular point, and we don't know what's going to happen. He passed away.
His
about-
wife, though, she's still around.
She does, but this is a financial catastrophe for them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that structure is just, I don't think we can use it.
Does
It goes on and on.
our perpetual building permit finally expire with his passing?
No, it doesn't.
Because he's still in title on deed?
Yeah, it's still there, it goes with the address. This guy was issued the building permit to make those improvements before I came to work for the city. And it's still
It's not done.
Yeah. He's slower than I am. But
Working on it.
So until that property's conveyed, our building permit's still,
conveyed or destroyed.
well,
Yeah. Our property, our permit is still in effect.
24 years?
We need to.
Yeah,
How many years?
And there used to be one on, Heath Road too. Those people are fast, but Heath, it was worse shape than Julius was. But Julius and the Weeklies were real close friends.
Yeah.
They visited each other to see if we get to crack this place.
I have one other item, unless you want to talk about that, it's fine.
Go ahead.
Okay, the last item is ordinance number 1, 2013, is up for first reading tonight. That's to appropriate funding to pave South 30th Street. I am asking if you could waive the second reading on that, pass it tonight. ODOT needs to have the check in their hands no later than the 16th of this month. So in order to give Heath and his department time to process the check request, I would ask that you waive the second reading and pass it tonight.
When did we know the amount and that date that they needed?
We knew it about the third week of December.
So they still didn't really give us any time.
No, because I had to go to the street committee to get on their agenda.
Yeah.
In order to present this.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. The strip down here.
So you got that, Tim?
And that's it. Unless you have any questions. Yeah, and Happy New Year, by the way. And you won't see Eddie here for at least a couple of months. Sorry to say.
John?
No, I'll be here.
He's gonna be here.
He's gonna be here. If he's here, Eddie's not here.
I don't.
No, Dave asked for that.
Teaching.
You done, John?
Yes, I am.
Fine, you got anything? Yep.
So if we need to waive the second reading.
All yours, Tim.
The ODOT needs the check by the
Go to
16th.
finance.
Finance.
Do we need to declare an emergency?
They could have something I wanna talk about, but I can't remember.
Okay. I'll front cap one.
Could have been.
They get the money for the second street grant, just out of curiosity. Is that the way to
It's almost done.
Well, then they start working, I never go that way because you can't get across the bridge.
Somebody get a copy?
I can't get across the bridge, so
We're good. Thank you.
640 Finance Committee. No legislative requests.
sitting, please.
Other items, I'll turn it over to Auditor Alexander.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For 2012, we completed 474 passports, and from that generated $11,850. That's up. I probably will run you a graph to show how we're comparing to previous years. I'll do that soon. The number of passports for 2012 were up from considerably from 2011, so the word seems to be getting around that this is the place to come. I think we passed where we were last year around the 1st of December. So whatever that percentage is, it seemed like we had an awful lot of, we did 8 of them today. I'll have better numbers for you.
You're averaging about 40 a month. This takes.
Can we pass a law that you had to have a passport to drive down 79? That would generate a lot more. They'd have to stop in here and get a passport.
Yeah, almost like having a toll gate there.
Wow, so what do you think?
That's how come you have to get one.
Probably need signs for that.
One or two.
In order for me to go on a boat ride with my daughter and son-in-law, I had to get a passport.
The only city you need a passport to drive.
We might raise up.
Item 2, in late December, we had actually been working on this for some time to implement the ability to pay our utility bills by going to our website and following a link there. And in addition, we've been wanting to get away from the incredibly labor-intensive process
of having people call in with credit cards or debit cards and taking that information over the phone. I'm trying to think how long it's been since we started taking credit cards. That's really, in relative terms, a fairly recent event. We didn't used to take credit cards at all, but we felt compelled to head that direction, since that seems to be the way that the world is moving. Anyway, if you call our the 522-1420 number, option number one, that the outgoing message will inform you that if you want to pay your utility bill over the phone, push 1, and then there's a robo-call system that takes you to an 800 number that dials it for you, and you can execute a payment over the phone, and that's significantly less labor intensive for us. Just has grown and grown and grown, and so many people call us, especially on the due date. And there, I know, are times that Linda B will maybe take 45, 50 in one day over the phone. And the process is you take the number down, the zip code, the 3 numbers on the back, the expiration date. You read all that stuff back to them, and then you run the card. And sometimes there's a mistake, and you got to rerun the card, and then there's you got to wait for an approval code, and then you got to read the approval code. This is now all automated, and
Is there a fee that the
there is a
consumer absorbs?
There is a fee that the consumer absorbs, and it's $1, and it's $1 that is not received by the city. So this is part of what this setup for the robocall is. There are still several ways for a utility customer to pay their bill free of any fee. In fact, I think this credit card, not credit card company, but bill processing company is making a big mistake. I think ultimately what they'll do is drive some customers away from this method of payment, and they already have fees associated with credit card and debit card payments that the city absorbs, but then this $1 is on top of those.
If you use that website, and you use credit cards, they're charged for that.
No.
I couldn't tell. That's what I was interested in.
And does this replace the automatic?
No.
It's in addition
It's
to.
doing, that is still the state-of-the-art method of payment. There are people that think that they're really doing things like on the cutting edge of technology, and they'll go online and have some kind of bill pay service that will take their information and take it directly out of their checking account, so they don't have to write a check. But then would you believe that company that they just did this transaction with writes a paper check and mails it to us? I mean, we have hundreds of them. And sometimes, if the timing's just off, we'll get those late and apply a late fee. So,
What is our merchant discount fee?
we just changed companies. It's less than what it used to be. I don't know. I was thinking it's like 2.25 seems to stick in my mind. I think there is a flat fee coupled with a percentage, but I think it all sorts out to be less than 3.
I love it, just comes straight out of the chicken.
Yeah.
That's no must.
That is the way to pay it, without a
I
doubt.
just go online,
Did you
look and
get
see
your
what
statement emailed to you?
No, I don't even think I get either. I don't even
Do
care.
that, and then you don't even get anything in the mail.
Don't even care, just get over it.
I just
Get your statement emailed to you.
Oh,
and
you mean
have
the statement
payment
emailed to
directly
me?
with-
Oh, it gets, yeah, the statement gets mailed to me.
Not mailed, emailed.
Oh, emailed?
You can have your statement emailed to you, have the payment directly taken out of your account,
Yeah, that's what I have already.
and you don't get anything in the mail, you don't get a bill in the mail or anything, just gets emailed to you. Huh? Water bill. Yep.
I think it's a 3-year deal or something.
Those people don't get it, I don't think.
Yeah,
I don't
They
think
send it out
get
separate when they do.
taxes.
They sometimes do that. They'll send out,
fixed fees.
you know,
for those
say
3
that.
years.
I don't know.
If you get your statement emailed, do you still include the things that you mail with water bills?
That's what I'm saying, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Do they scan it maybe and send it with it?
I get mine emailed to me, and
You
I
don't
don't
get any
see
extra
it.
stuff?
No.
How do you know what's going on?
Yeah.
I don't.
It just shows up. That's why he has to come to work every day.
That's like mine.
Figure out what's going on.
I do every day.
Anyway, this system is working well, and if any of you want to pay your bill by calling us with a credit card or debit card, you'll need to know your jurisdiction code. And I was able to convince this company that preferred a 4-digit code to come up with a 5-digit code, which just happens to be our zip code. So I thought that made sense. And I figured training people to use that, they'll real quick learn that that's what it is. Item number 3, the salary report that I prepare every year is done. I looked at it, well, not quite done. Yeah, I looked at it today. There's some payouts that are included that have some positions appear to be exceedingly big numbers. There are also some positions where somebody left before the end of the year, and I usually try to clean those out of it so you have a more accurate look at what is actually happening. Payouts or somebody that didn't work 12 months kind of will skew what that view but I'm without a doubt I'll have that by the next council meeting. And the last item, some of you have already turned in your look at that.
Coming in the flurry here.
Haven't been through my stuff. I'll get to you.
Fantastic.
When do you need those by?
I don't know, like March or something.
Oh, okay. I was gonna see.
I just
want to see if you need to make arrangements to try to get done. If you don't need it until March, you should probably be able to.
yeah, I decided that I think we had some trouble getting it from somebody last year, so I just made a note to put these out early. And I wasn't going to say anything.
That's what I was going.
That's why I didn't take it home. That's why I gave it to you right now. If I'd have taken it home, I'd have been that same guy. That's you.
Thanks, Brian, for
You're
your
welcome.
punctuality. And Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
I was reporting Iowa ethics.
Yeah.
Reporting
Yeah, that should be
donation,
coming.
that's a joke.
Yeah, we should all have to complete that soon.
Good time now. Anything else for the committee, new members?
Just had a little question. I can't think of it.
Yeah.
On your passport, did you notice you did have a period of time of advertising it, didn't you? Did you notice any improvement?
Honestly, I made the decision to not execute that plan to advertise. So the city the council appropriated some money for me to advertise, and I didn't do it.
Well, I thought there was talk of advertising.
There was, and this body appropriated some money.
So you got it?
$1,000 or something?
I don't even remember what it was.
1,500, something like that.
I don't recall, but I guess just because you authorized the expenditure doesn't mean I had to do it. I did not.
Just because it's budget doesn't mean you gotta spend. Please.
Make a, just a rough payout to tell us what day of the month we're supposed to get our checks on this coming year. We used to get that, but we didn't this past year.
That's something I think that, I don't know who makes that. I've never made one of those up.
Yeah.
I went through my calendar and just used a highlighter mark.
Yeah, you know, just a piece of paper tells us when we're gonna get paid, you know.
Okay.
It'd be Debbie or Lynn that would have done that before, right?
Sure, I will, I'll see to that.
With my wife, I mean, so.
Surely,
One 2 years ago, and then we're supposed to get paid.
Shirley's on it.
I got hot water in my mouth, gets me in trouble.
She ever thinks you try to pull a fast one, just have her call.
Anything else Shirley needs to discuss tonight? No? All right, we're adjourned at 6:54.
The only thing that would have made that better is if she would have been here to ask that question. That would have been even better.
I think we'd have had an immediate answer.
All right, want to do caucus real quick? So we're going to take.
Might as well.
This is a massive one, isn't it?
Yeah. Mr. Henry's going to do the invocation. Got approval of the minutes. Appointment of Jim Roberts for Board of Zoning Appeals. Mayor, is that you?
Yes.
Okay. Petition communications. The first one,
Tim,
delinquent.
I'm wondering, under, I don't know if this is necessarily the appropriate spot, but they're at number 5, the special orders
Yeah.
and committees. I'm just thinking that somewhere along the line here, we ought to have a moment of silence, Wally Wharton, who passed away over the weekend. Where do you think would be the most appropriate place for that?
I can do it.
You want to do it the invocation part?
Want to do it that way?
Do it.
Yeah.
That's probably that's.
I think
what
that would
we've
be
got
wholly appropriate.
Okay.
I
Cletus,
asked
you'll take care of that.
him about that too. So.
Okay, Cletus, you'll take care of that then
Yeah.
during the invocation. All right, that sounds good. Thanks, Mayor, for bringing that up.
Yep.
Petition communication delinquent accounts from the utilities. Let's see, it'd be Mr. Morrow. You take care of that one, and then the liquor. Jeff, you want to do that? Not
It's the
requested.
old not
Yeah,
request.
not request a hearing. And then after we not request a hearing, then go ahead and make a motion to receive and file all communications. Yeah,
Me?
yeah, that way you just do it.
So I got an eye note on both these.
Yeah. Got our committee reports here, and then introduction of ordinances, ordinance 1, 2013. Need to waive that.
I'll take care of that.
You want to do that, Cletus?
Yeah.
Okay, Cletus will do the waiving of that, and then after we waive it, we'll approve it. Then there's none on the second reading, and so that's pretty much it. Anybody else have anything else?
Could be in a record.
You could go quick if you guys don't speak. Hey, I have one other. I have one other item. A gentleman got a hold of me about a camera system. It's kind of like instead of loop detectors, you have the cameras. Like we have the cameras on 79 now, except instead of being a camera in each direction, you just put up one camera, and it does like the whole intersection. And
How do you get it to stay up in the air like that?
Skyhook. Anyway, he wanted to make a presentation sometime before the committee. Well, I wanted to talk to Bob to see about his, and then also maybe do it safety, because he's also a township trustee somewhere. I'm not sure exactly which township.
Here in the county?
Yeah, I think in the county. And so he's not really available on the first or third Mondays, like we have a meeting, and I really wanted to do it then because we wouldn't have enough time anyway. So I was thinking about maybe seeing if he would do it like on the second Monday, which would be safety, and maybe do it after like police fire if he'd come in. But I don't think I want to try to do it this like January, but maybe have it for February or something like that.
Can't you also just call a special meeting of the committee? If you want to have it in the streets committee, can't you just do that?
Yeah, I guess we could do that. I just don't sure how much, what he's going to have, what he's going to show, you know, and everything.
How long it's going to take?
Yeah, how long it's going to take or anything like that.
Where do you see this implemented before?
Well, I haven't seen it. Now, BJ Varner, who's the NERC traffic control guy, he's seen him used a couple places and thought about using him a couple places, but didn't really, you know, hasn't really done him yet and stuff like that. So the idea was, it all came about on the 30th Street when we were talking about maybe having the left turns.
So you're talking about a camera that's up above the intersection pointing down.
Yeah, you set off to the side. Yeah, it sets off to the side somewhere on one of the maps over the side.
Okay.
But it's able to see the traffic in enough directions
like
that
a
you can
180 view kind of thing.
Yeah,
or
something.
What do they call that lens?
Wide angle.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like I said,
Fisheye lens. There you go. Yeah.
I'm just curious, you know, to see it. You know, it's one of them deals where maybe he'll come in, just make a little presentation. You know, it's not like we're going to buy anything or anything like that.
Because honestly,
you know.
Tim, in my mind, I'm thinking, how does this thing hover up above the intersection?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
No, it's probably a fisheye lens.
Yeah, there's, you know, like I said, I just thought maybe it might have him come in, like right at the safety, you know, just to come in, just give a look. I mean, 15, 20 minutes. I don't know what it might be, half hour if he has a presentation. I don't know. I'm just, you know, getting started on it and everything. But I just thought it might be informative, you know, to people see what it's like and stuff.
I like cameras at the intersections already.
Huh?
You have cameras at the intersection.
Not on 30th Street.
No, there's ones on 79.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. What all this came from is, you know, we were talking about doing the left turns maybe at 30th Street, and then I went back and was talking to BJ Varner, and he was saying about what it might cost to do the loops or to do this 5 section, and we were kind of pricing. Well, then BJ must have talked to this guy because seeing him in his travels and said something about Heath might be interested in something, you know. So then he contacted me, and so I don't know what he's got, what, you know, but it just kind of like, you know, never hurts to.
Yeah.
I
like it.
I mean, you know, I don't know whether, you know, maybe, guess he could come in maybe next Monday night after or something like that if he's available and just, you know, say, hey, you got 15, 20 minutes, you know, just see what happens. If that's all right with you guys.
That's a good idea. Yeah, let's see.
It might be interesting. He might bring in some visual things and so we can see how it,
what it is. That one too?
Anything,
No? I'll be
you know. Anyway, I'll just get back to him and see if he's available.
Try to
Okay.
Okay. If Newark doesn't take up all the money putting a sidewalk in, you think we could use some of that money for that? Something like that?
Well, actually, you know, we're putting in a lot of loops in the plans. The loops are going in there and stuff and everything. But I was just curious to see like what the cost of the loops come in, because in the plans for Newark, we have in there that if so many loops are knocked out, that we have the option to not put the loops in and maybe, you know, do cameras or something like that. And so the idea might be, if the price was going to be real high to have all those loops, don't do the loops, just do if a camera would work and everything. We might be money ahead to do the camera, as opposed to. You know.
Does the paving for that project go all the way up to Cherry Valley, or does it end at Main Street?
It ends
for the 30th Street project.
It ends at Main.
It ends at Main.
It goes from Main 79 to Main on 30th, and then Main gets from 34th Street to like the old railroad tracks where they took them out, like past Kaufman there, gets there, and then Cherry Valley goes from about the bridge. You know how you got the intersection there, the traffic lanes?
Yeah.
That was paved for the intersection. It starts about there and goes all the way to 16.
So are they paving that bridge, or?
Yeah.
They're paving that bridge?
Yeah.
They're paving the bridge that you can't drive on half of it or something?
Wait a minute. Not
That's West Church.
Not Church Street.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said Cherry Valley.
Cherry Valley.
Oh, okay, all right.
Cherry Valley.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought you were going to say we're paving a bridge that eventually is going to get replaced. Yeah. Yeah.
I know which one
You know,
you're talking
but-
about now. Okay.
And we're going to pave stuff that eventually be knocked out with a, you know, roundabout or whatever and all that stuff. You know. Might be a roundabout out there.
Where?
Whenever they put in
When they put in the new
16, and they put in new interchange, and they cut off, and you come back in. And everything when you come back into Cherry Valley, instead of having a light there, it'll be a roundabout.
Have you seen the roundabouts that they're using north and south of Nelsonville on the 33 bypass? They've got, they've been working on that 33 bypass forever.
Yeah.
Apparently, I was told that that was the biggest recipient of stimulus money funding in the state of Ohio, which actually got this thing, next year it should be done.
Yeah.
Right now they have it open from north of Nelsonville. You come around on the north side of Nelsonville, and then you can get off the bypass and connect you back to the old part of 33. Well, where it connects is a roundabout. Then south of Nelsonville is going to be another connection where you could get off of the bypass, and that's also a roundabout. And then it'll go on farther south of Nelsonville and connect back into regular, 33.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've got roundabouts that they're putting one north and one south of Nelsonville, coming off of that bypass. Yeah.
These are really being pushed by ODOT. ODOT's actually offering courses to people like myself to attend, to discuss these things. It's the new up-and-coming thing.
But every normal driver.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan yet of the roundabout that they put on the other side in Athens, on the other side of the Richland Bridge there, as you go, to the football stadium. I'm not a big fan of that one yet. There's too much traffic that goes through there on game day that it's kind of confusing if you're not used to it. Yeah.
And I did see some people when they first put that in there go make a left and go the wrong way. They went around. They went left.
Roundabout?
Yeah. They went left. Yeah. I saw that. I saw that. I went, where are they going? It was in the evening. There was no cars coming the other way, but it was like I'm going like this, and they turned and went, and I'm like, and they were ahead of me. I said, well, okay.
Also, they went left, then quick left.
They went the wrong way, left around the road.
You'll see that in Lincoln County. You'll see that in Lincoln County.
My husband was trying to come out of that auto parts store on 79, and there was somebody holding their bit because he was sitting there to turn left, and he got mad eventually because he started to turn left, and then it's like, well, wait a minute.
Your husband know that?
Well, no. He has road rage, but
He isn't allowed to get mad?
he didn't tell me that he got mad. So the other guy was mad.
My buddy got caught down in Kentucky. He had 27-gallon moonshine he's bringing to Ohio. He slipped down in Kentucky. He had the roundabout go around the courthouse. And he seen it, he said, oh my goodness. And sure enough, this old lady hit him in the rear, and he tried to fire off, But he ended up spending 2 years in Atlanta. He said, I was a librarian.
So, Cletus, is this some of the stuff that you were just talking about before we had the meeting?
Well, that's a fact. Red dye was it. You want to check the